just pegged it across the studio. It's a very busy day today. Yes, he's back. That man who has the uncanny ability to know almost everything about you just by staring at your lumps, bumps and lines. I'm, of course, talking about Jans as the winner of last year's Date with Fate special. Palm expert Robin Lown is here, and today he's starting a mini course in do-it-yourself palmistry. Good to see you.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's good, very good to be back. I was impressed and terrified by you when you you were so accurate in the Date with Fate special that we did, and I just couldn't believe that you could do that with palmistry.
Well, it is an ancient art. It's thousands of years old, and in a way, I suppose that's context that we've got. Thousands of years, going back to the Greeks even, Plato, Aristotle, people like that knew about it. So, in a sense, I'm the end of a long line, so maybe there's a lot of history there. In fact, there is a story about Julius Caesar, who had, I suppose this is topical this time of year, somebody came to see him and said that he was the son of Herod. And he said, well, let's have a look at your hand. And he said, no, you're not. Now, how did he know that? Well, he was well versed in hand reading, and the Greeks and the Romans knew a lot about it. Anyway, we are modern palmists these days. We're more into genetic disposition and reading character, I suppose.
And can we, to start off with a very basic sort of grounding in it, can we actually look at our own hands and tell something about ourselves?
Oh, yes. I think we have to start with the building blocks. So in a sense, we're going back to a child's building block, and I think the first building block we need to do is go back and think about genetic disposition as regards, first of all, shape of hand, because it's the first thing we all notice about our own hands. So we can go back to that, I suppose, and what I'd like to do with you now is to go through a few rules of thumb. I know it's a bit of a pun, sorry about that, but we can go back to looking at a few rules. Now, I suppose the first thing that everyone asks, whether you're right or left-handed. Are you right-handed?
I'm right-handed.
Right, well, right-handers generally, about 85% of people are right-handers these days. And right-handers normally are in the realm of, in their character or disposition, like logical things, practical, logical people. Left-handers are somewhat more intuitive, more given to being creative, and fly it a little bit. And let's face it, a lot of left-handed sportsmen are very quick indeed, so they're used to being quick and sharp. So are you right-handed
musicians as well?
Absolutely. And Paul McCartney for one, he plays the guitar the other way around. And very intuitive people. Anyway, let's go back. We can start with this. Let's go back to shape, first of all. But I know a lot of people out there would say, well, what about the size of hands? Because some are small and some are large. Well, a very quick test for that, and this will probably get people walking into walls, but don't worry, is you can test the size of your hand by putting the base on your chin, and if it comes above your eyebrows, then you have got large hands. All right, there we are. It looks a wonderful picture, doesn't it?
It's got there. It's got there.
Right. And if you have small hands, in fact, your fingers probably won't quite reach the eyebrows. So that's one very quick test. And I can imagine everybody out there now trying that and walking into walls. So let's go back to that. And large hands will actually look at the details. Think about someone looking at a newspaper. If they look at the newspaper, small-handed individuals will look at the major headlines and just skim. Larger-hand people, like yourself, and me included, would actually look at the finer print and the details. So we have there a large hand, if you like, looking at small deeds, and a small hand looking at the big picture. So that's straight away something you can know about each other. Square hands, of course, then go back to being basic.
Square is just the palm, is it? Whereabouts do you take that from, for instance?
Well, you can actually measure that. I've drawn the red lines on here, that there are two types of palms. There's the square, which is obvious, and the rectangular, which is a much longer hand. And if we could just use yours for a moment, you can actually see that yours, Mark, is a much longer hand here. It is more rectangular.
Oh, is it? Oh.
So rectangular hands, the larger hand, actually looks at details. The smaller square is practical, materialistic, and down to earth.
So what am I?
You are actually longer than square, more detailed.
Oh, right, am I?
All right. But then we can come into fingers, and you can do this for yourself at home. You can measure the middle finger, which is the quickest measure it down the hand, and if it's in equal proportion, this person is rather balanced in their nature. And I do believe that yours, Mark, is actually slightly shorter. You measure there, down the middle finger, it's a little bit shorter than your palm, indicating impatience. So short...
Get on with it.
Yeah. So short fingers indicate impatience, and longer fingers details. So now we can put all that together very quickly. Just show you how it's done. Square hand, long fingers, practical, material, down to earth, but take their time, longer fingers. Square hand, short fingers, Practical, down to earth, but rather quick, and sometimes misses the details.
Oh,
so,
but
yeah, it's
does
very
it
logical.
matter about things like, you know, the flexibility in your hand, because people can do things like that and other people can't?
Well, flexibility is another area. It actually denotes part of the disposition. If you flex your hand this way on the desk, if you flex it that way, and it does get very flexy from the knuckles, that person is very flexible in their mind, able to adapt. People who are rather stiff in that area actually find it difficult to adapt. So there we are, stiff quality and a very flexible quality.
So we briefly touched on fingers, and there's so many different things that they tell you, but what about your thumb?
Oh, thumbs, it's like an addition to the hand, isn't it, in a sense. In fact, the old palmistry books, the Indian palmistry, goes back to the thumb and says this is the powerhouse of energy. In fact, where your thumb is situated on the hand, it looks like a sausage stuck on, doesn't it? If it's very close to the forefinger, these people are rather inhibited and cautious. If it's wide and this angle is over 45 degrees, that person is more intuitive and more open. And if we look at yours is extremely bendy. I don't know if camera can pick this up here. Look at this here. Sometimes almost shows irresponsible, so you have to be very careful. If it's larger than 90 degrees, it also shows the sporty type or person who believes that they are. I have met people whose thumbs are very low and not so sporty, but they like to watch it, so they enjoy sporting activity.
Well, you've immediately told me that one of the main things, that big and just the size of hands, it's proportioned to yourself. That's the thing, isn't it? Right, so you can you actually look at it. Now, the thing that always strikes me is I'm sure my hand has changed over the years. I mean, so does your personality change in tune with the way that your hand develops?
Well, yes and no, but I think the easiest answer really is that the hand develops at the fetal stage. And, of course, then the building blocks of life are there, it's genetic. And as you learn and as things change in your life, it's a bit like a world map. It changes with time. And, of course, the input of the world and things that are happening around the world actually make a difference to the areas. And that is exactly the way you look at the hand. According to things that you do and your desires, the hand's lines to and from the main lines will change. So, as we're not doing lines this week, I won't draw any on.
No.
But we can see that growing perhaps in other weeks.
Well, I was wondering about the notion of if you injure your hand, can you still read it? Or does that actually have a bearing on what it tells you?
For injuries, even the fingertips, old, you know, crooks and so on, tried to put skin grafts onto their fingers and only found that they grew through in about a month's time. So you cannot get rid of your genetic code. You can't even skin graft it off. It will grow back.
I have a fantastic way if you ever want to rob a bank, because when I was a kid I held up my hand and they said, "You're musical," and I didn't realise it's because I had a big hand. They put me on double bass, but you have no fingerprints.
You wear them off.
Yeah, you wear them off. So there you go.
Well,
that's
that's
a tip
great,
for everybody out there if you're feeling a bit broke after Christmas. Thank you very much. Next Tuesday, Robin's going to be delving into the murky waters of passion. Well, hey, so obviously that's one not to be missed. And right, while you lot carry on studying your palms, we're going to be taking a break. But when we get back, makeup artist Sian Richards will be here to take your calls. So if you've got a beauty question,